first of all, we put a few copies of these out. I wanted to let everybody know that the governor has declared the month of March to be Caregiver Month. And this is a huge issue for us at ARP, caregiving and all the issues around that. It's ginormous, and we'd like to do more in that area. Unfortunately, the state never gets to fund anything, especially not older Americans, but respite care would be wonderful to cover too, because a lot of families are taking care of families. So again, March is Caregiver Month. I'll just also point out we gave a quick fact sheet on the state of things in Colorado, Social Security quick facts, just full of good information for people who like information, who like to share this stuff. We're big into it, ARP. Our number one priority this last session has pretty much been the number one priority for us ever since I've been at ARP, which is increased funding for senior services. It's woefully underfunded. I'll just come out and say that. Never has been funded to where it needs to be funded. Not even remotely close. Last year we did get a little bump. We did really want to see a bill. And why do we want to see a bill and not just have it in the long bill? Because we need to build for the future. And that's a huge thing. We need to build for the future. And people really need these services now more than ever. So, and it makes it very hard for, like, my friend John Zabawa. How do you plan year to year? Well, you may get it in the long bill, but we need a bill to really bump that amount up and keep it up. So that was disappointing from our perspective. What's another huge issue for us at ARP? Ginormous issue, and it's not something you probably traditionally think of in this group, and that is your phone. So I'm going to talk to everybody about phone legislation. You may have heard there's like two big issues the legislature hasn't even introduced yet and is going to be talking about. One of them is the budget. The other has to do with telco reform. Now let me just say, ARP is not pushing for telco reform, because the next thing you'll say is, well, where's the bill? Let me see your draft. What's going on? Okay, well, I don't have that. We used to get to go to some of the meetings with the telco companies, but they quit inviting us, so I don't know what's going to be in these bills officially. But it is of concern. And why is this of concern? Let's say you have a huge billion-dollar industry. Would you want any regulation for that? Of course not. Nobody wants any regulation. But let's say that your billion-dollar industry happens to be an essential service for just about every American. Does everybody here have a phone? Just out of curiosity? And when I talk about phone deregulation, a lot of people are like, what? Why do I care about that? Why is that a big issue? Well, it's a ginormous issue, and why is it? Okay, everybody said they had a phone. So let me ask, who has a cell phone? Raise your hand if you've got a cell phone. Okay. How many of you have what's called VoIP? What? Okay. How many of you have what's called a landline? Something that connects? Okay. So a lot of you have landlines, all right? That's very telling. How many of you have home computers or a tablet? Okay, that's interrelated to this conversation too. How much are you paying for that? Are you paying just about right, or too much, or not enough? How many of you? Yeah. What about the quality of it? What about, now here's the number one tickler, and this is why it's so important. What about 911? If you don't have a phone, you don't have access to 911. And that's why this is a great, big, huge issue. We take it very seriously. Now let me just go back to VoIP. When I was talking about VoIP, now of all of you who said you had landlines, how many of you are actually with Comcast? That is VoIP. I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but that is not landline, that is VoIP. And that means voice over the internet. So it's basically a connection that's going into your computer, and then your computer is delivering that voice to you. So that's a little bit different. As it is right now in the state of Colorado, your Public Utilities Commission regulates your landline. They regulate that. And basically they keep service, and they keep it affordable, and they make sure it has access to 911. That's basically what the PUC does. When I said VoIP, did you know that that's not regulated? That's not. That is not regulated right now. And looking out for your best interest. They like to tell legislators this is all about you when they're down there selling it. They want to keep it from ever being regulated. And we've seen this bill for, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. It's basically spearheaded by Representative Angela Williams in the House and Carol Murray. And then in the Senate, it is Senator Kerr and Senator Scheffel. And these four have basically run a bill the last several years to keep VoIP from ever being regulated. Is that in your best interest?
No.
And again, it's a hard one to fight because a lot of people don't get it, and they don't get that we're talking about them when we talk about this issue. But it's a huge issue, and especially the 911 in this issue. Because every year they try to keep it so that 911 isn't ever regulated, and they try to stick it. That's part of what's in this bill. Sneaky stuff. Last year when they introduced this bill, it said not to regulate VoIP, but as it got amended and passed in the House, it would deregulate all phone service. The Public Utilities Commission just had a case in which they determined that your cell phone is competition to your landline. So they basically said that in those areas they can deregulate if your cell phone can compete with your landline. It's kind of apples and oranges, because I'll tell you, the power goes out, what's most likely going to work, your landline or your cell phone? Well, believe it or not, it's your landline, because there's power that goes through those cords. They've seen that in emergency situations nationwide. What happens when they deregulate those landlines? Prices go up. I have an article in the back. Consistently, this is not just a Colorado issue. Every state, they go to the AT&T and CenturyLink, they go to the legislature and they convince them, this is a great thing. We have got to do this in the interest of consumers. Every single time they do it, it raises rates. Every single time. And they'll say it's to provide more competition. It doesn't. And is your cell phone competition with the landline? A lot of people, especially our members, would say they would like to have it supplement, not substitute. And what is the problem? This is the big thing. Consistently, I keep hearing, we got to do something, we got to do something. Why? We are getting technology in this state. We're not behind on any level. The one issue that keeps coming up is broadband, and that's where that computer conversation comes into play. People want to have fast-going computers. We get that. There are areas of the state that need broadband. Basically, what they want to do to expand broadband is use the money that goes to maintain those landlines. Now that those are competitive, they can use that money that would go to landline maintenance to go to broadband expansion. And again, that may sound good, but that's only about $54 million. How much broadband do you really think you're going to get for $54 million? Not a lot, especially when you need to push it up those hills. You're not going to get a lot. But you're going to lose, potentially, your landline. Because what happens if you take away the money to maintain those lines? They're going to go away. ARP did a big mailing at the beginning of session letting people know that they're considering legislation to get rid of their landlines. They heard. The legislature got calls. They were furious. Why are you telling people this? We're not the ones bringing this forward. Again, we're trying to say this is what's going on. You need to know. Again, that big bill is probably going to be in regards to VoIP. It's supposed to be out this week. They've been saying that for weeks. I don't have it yet. As soon as I do, I'll let the world know. There'll also be something in broadband. There could be something on 911. There's a whole bunch of other issues too. But this telephone issue impacts you. It impacts everybody. Again, if you can't get a hold of emergency services, how are you even going to call them? If your phone, you can't afford it, or it's not working right, there's a lot of issues around this. So we ask that everybody take it very seriously. It's coming down the pipe, and we'll let you know about it. So.